I look with Washington with just a big question, what a mess it is. You know, they said Ronald Reagan could never tell a lie, Bill Clinton can never tell the truth, and Joe Biden can't tell the difference. So blessings to you all. I think the only thing Build Back Better is building back inflation and the Taliban. So you have your hands in front of you, a lot of work to do. A lot of people ask me, how did we win in Virginia? What exactly happened in a state that Joe Biden had won by 10 points? And I think part of it is things that we as Americans, both parties, used to take for granted are now considered partisan. When Terry McAuliffe said the quiet part out loud in that debate, where he said parents don't have a right to the education of their children. I was with Glenn that night, I was actually staying at his home, and you know, any candidate would tell you, you get done with the debate, you're exhausted. And he got back and I said, how do you feel? He said, I don't know. And I said, I think he gave you a gift on that education question. You may be hearing that more often. And see, my advisor said the same thing. And within 48 hours, we had signs up all throughout Virginia that had two simple words, parents matter. Both parties used to overwhelmingly agree with that. I remember being in Alexandria with Glenn Youngkin, and a woman came up to me after the rally, and she says, I voted Democrat my whole life, I'm voting straight Republican this year. And I said, ma'am, do you mind me asking you why? And she said, because a lot of these politicians have forgotten a very important truth. Never, ever, ever get between a mother and her child. I just said, yes, ma'am. I won't forget it. But other things we used to take for granted as well, that both parties used to agree on. Things like merit. That's now considered a controversial statement. We have a magnet school in Northern Virginia called Thomas Jefferson High School. It's considered one of the best public schools in the country. And up until last year, it had a really, really controversial admissions policy. It said if you had the grades and the test scores to get in, you could go. But then, some of the social justice warriors on the school board, and we now know this from their FOIA text messages, thought that there were too many Asian students in the school. In fact, it was a majority-minority high school, but they determined it was the wrong minorities. And so they concocted an admissions standards in which Asian American population of that high school dropped by 20 points in 1 year. I had a mom come up to me. She said, my daughter's done everything right since the first grade. Straight A's. Has studied every weekend. And now I'm realizing that she may not be able to go to her school of her dream. Not because of anything she's done, but for simply who she is. Because she's Korean American. Folks, we wonder why so many groups are flocking to the GOP. Because they know that we are the party of opportunity. We are not telling them, your child can't go to the school of your dreams. I had a privilege as Attorney General. My first meeting was meeting with a group of parents, concerned parents from TJ High School, and I had a delightful mother who's originally from Vietnam, who's telling how she, again, had been Democrat almost all of her life, but then she went to a school board meeting. She got up and spoke and said, hey, why don't I go back to an admissions policy of merit? And she was told by the school board that she needed to check her white privilege. At some point, wokeism always claps on itself like a dying star. And so, if there's anything I would tell any candidate running for any office, is that parents matter, and never forget that. The other thing we all used to take for granted was public safety, standing up for our police. The fact is the vast majority of our police officers do it right. I go to work every day, I put on a coat and tie. Kiss my wife goodbye, grab my coffee mug. For the men and women that wear the shield, they have to put on a bulletproof vest. It's the hardest job in America. They deserve our backing. But now to say, thank you. I had 4 different Democratic sheriffs in Virginia endorse a Republican ticket this past fall. As one of them said, you know, I got tired of being in a tunnel and seeing an oncoming train. And for once, if you guys get elected, I know it's not coming for me. Because that's what they felt like. They felt besieged. You guys have a Republican state House and a Republican state Senate. Don't ever lose that. Ever. Because we did. We had 2 years of one-party rule in Virginia with this far-left, liberal, criminal-first, victim-last mindset, and they passed bill after bill and enacted law after law that made it next to impossible for law enforcement to do their job. And now we're seeing, as we saw this past election, a murder rate that has exploded in Virginia. That used to be not controversial. Both parties used to support law enforcement. Now that's considered a question mark. Finally, one of the most important things that we're facing as a country is the very idea of who we are as America. That we are at our core fundamentally a good and decent and noble country. That we are indeed that last best hope on earth. Abraham Lincoln uttered those words, but the first person to write them was actually Thomas Jefferson. We were only 20 years young as a country. But he understood, and part of Jefferson's genius was what we could become as a country. I'm from Virginia Beach. I represented the oceanfront area there. But the reality is, my story doesn't begin in Virginia Beach. It actually begins in Havana, Cuba, when a scared 19-year-old girl got on an airplane, penniless and homeless, and literally not knowing where her next meal was going to come from. That was my mother, Miyares. I love to speak to high school and college students and ask them this question: why did she come here? What was so unique about this country? It's because she was desperate to live in a society that recognized her rights came from God and not from some government official. I've said that what separates us from so many people who woke up this morning on this planet in America is what I call the knock at the door. When you hear that, you're not nervous. In my case, Amazon Prime's come to drop something off, or my dog got out. But if you think about it, most of the people who woke up this morning on this planet, if they hear this, it means something very different. It means someone's there to take them away because they worship God in a manner they disagree with, or they've spoken out against the government, or spoken for human rights. That simple knock separates how you live your life between how so many others live theirs. I did a recent commencement address, and I noted to the crowd that everybody, and I would say the same thing in this room, and everybody working, standing in the back, every one of you woke up and won life's lottery this morning. And that's by being born in this amazing country. Because if you think about it, there are millions and millions of people that would do everything in their power. They would crawl over broken glass. They would cling to the side of an airplane to be seated exactly where you're seated right now. We are fundamentally a good and decent and noble country. That scared 19-year-old girl made a journey that ended up right here in Greensboro, North Carolina. She lived at 926 McCormick Street. No heat, just a furnace. She got her clothes from the Salvation Army and whatever furniture would be left out on the street. She lived with her mother, my abuelita, and her brother, my uncle, Angel Miyares, who heard that knock at the door during Bay of Pigs, was taken away in the middle of the night, suffered the humiliation of a mock execution. She found something here. She found and met the spirit of the Tar Heel State, of the North Carolinians that embraced her that heard her stories of the horrors of communism. She and her uncle scraped by. One of their first Christmases was Christmas of 1965. My uncle got called into the boss's office. He was loading trucks at Ryder. He thought he was in trouble. They had taken a collection, $500, so they could have a Christmas. They worked, they struggled. They weren't looking over their shoulder in fear, because they were living under the altar of freedom. Cubans appreciate freedom. My Uncle Angel, when he came here, first day he got a job. Next day, he was here one night. Next day, he got up, didn't speak any English, look at the one ends, got a job at the Howard Johnson on Beasley Street as a dish boy. His background was accounting, but he came here to work, live the American dream. 20 years later, he was back at that same Howard Johnson, teaching an accounting class in a suit and tie. He ran into his old boss when he was at the hotel from the kitchen, and he didn't recognize him, because he used to see him in a busted up t-shirt working in the back room. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the American dream. That young girl that fled Cuba one night decided to be at the circus. And on the way out of Greensboro Coliseum, started feeling contractions. February 10th, 1976. And I entered the world early in the morning, February 11th, 1976. I kind of got my start right here. That young girl that saw so much made the trip with me tonight. Well, as we were coming in, she said, "This is where it all started for us. Thank you, North Carolina, and thank you to my mother."